Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Salesforce Ben LinkedIn Live, where today we're going to be talking about tips and tricks to create a slick lead generation process in Salesforce. And as I'm sure most of the people on this call know, Sales Cloud is one of Salesforce's biggest products. And creating a slick lead process is, of course, one of the first processes of actually getting sales data into Salesforce. So it's very, very key. And things have changed a lot, over the past 10 years or so. We've had digital transformations, we've had the pandemic, and the way that people sell is very different. So it's constantly evolving. So that's what we're going to talk a bit about today. So I'm going to introduce to the stage Mike, Hope,
Ben,
and Alyssa. How are you guys doing?
Doing very well, thank you.
Doing great. Yep, doing good.
Good to have you all here today. So I'm going to hand over to you guys now. I'll share your screen. And we are going to be having a Q&A at the end. So for everyone that's on the call, feel free to drop your questions in the comments as the session is going on, and we'll try and get as many questions answered as we can. So over to you guys. See you in a bit.
Fantastic, thank you. Well, first of all, I'd like to start by thanking Ben and his team for helping set this up. This has been a fantastic experience for us. So introductions, my name is Mike Leitner. I'm the president of Vision E, and I'm joined today with Hope Morgan. She's our general manager and overall expert in Salesforce. And a little bit about our company. So we've been a Salesforce partner since 2011. And our founder and CEO, George Toronto, he's been exposed to the Salesforce ecosystem going all the way back to 2002. So the company itself has an enormous amount of expertise. We've seen a lot of evolution in the space, and we've had a lot of lessons learned, and that's what we're going to share with you today. All right, Hope, next slide, please. So here's the agenda, overall agenda for today. We're going to talk about some of the big picture trends that have occurred in the sales space over about the last 5 years, because there have been some major changes. Then we're going to talk about what the effect of those changes were on the overall sales process. And then we're going to get into the nuts and bolts a little bit and talk about how that lead generation process actually looks, and then cap it all off with how to master mobile engagement. All right, slide. So Alyssa, getting into GDPR, something I know that you have had some firsthand experience with. This was really a major impact, not only over in the EU, but in the US as well. So GDPR actually became effective in 2018. It was passed in 2016. And then they kind of gave us a little grace period as the marketers and sales teams kind of went, oh my God, what just happened? What's all this about consent? We have to get purpose. We have to record it. How do we do this? And I know from over here in the States, when it originally hit, we were kind of like a GDP what? So it was quite the task to accommodate that starting out. And Alyssa, I don't know how things were for you, but it was quite the surprise for us.
Yeah, I mean, GDPR, when it first came into force, like you said, it was a major surprise, not only for European companies, but anyone that dealt with people in Europe. But not only was it a problem then, it's still a problem today. I was actually on an email thread at work about GDPR today. So it affects all of the decisions that we make in terms of Salesforce, wherever our contact and lead data is stored. So it's something that we have to continually think about every single day. And I'm sure every organization that either works with European clients or is based in Europe has to think about it as well.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, because GDPR of 2018 is not GDPR of 2023. The legislation itself continues to evolve with the times. So it's something that you have to keep tabs on. Now, an interesting thing about the timing between 2019, when really the enforcement of GDPR began, and 2020 we have the pandemic and business is pushed online. So everybody went online. So where was the focus of the GDPR compliance effort? It was not on live events. They were shut down. They're done. So the GDPR compliance kind of focused on the technology side, and it was really kind of natural. So I won't say easy, but because you have things like opt-ins, and with technology, you have a data trail, that was relatively straightforward. So the technology for GDPR compliance actually matured much more quickly during the pandemic on a digital side than it did for live events. And that's understandable why that would have happened during the pandemic. So here we are, 2021, 2022, no live events going on. E-commerce is absolutely booming. It went off the charts. And a couple things happened. The pace of business accelerated. And so your sales cycles shrunk down. So there was no more, hey, I meet Alyssa out at a workshop and I wait 3, 4, 5 days to get back to her. No, it's you have people are searching online. They find a product they're interested in. And within minutes, they are trying to set up a call. And if you don't respond right away, it has negative consequences. So e-commerce pace really went through the roof. And then, having digital commerce is a wonderful thing. And I've always said that so often when you have a good thing, there's something else on the other side. And for the pandemic era, what happened when e-commerce boomed is, of course, you had cybercrime surge. And I can still remember, pre-pandemic, it was very common. You could go into a local restaurant. They used to have these little fish bowls, and you put your business card in there and have a raffle. Or you would have, this was common among realtors. They'd have a community bulletin board, and you'd go and a realtor would have their business card put up there. That doesn't go anymore because now your email address is something that a cyber criminal can take, represent your image, represent your company to somebody else to commit crimes. So in my company, I still remember that right around that time frame is when we always had email training, but right around that time is when it really went through the roof. So shortly thereafter, let's call it late 2022, we've got events are starting to come back. And as a matter of fact, in 2023 now, live events have outpaced the pre-pandemic rate. So we're beyond 2019. But we have all these things that have impacted the way that we do business that are based on a technology-focused method of doing sales that we spent the last 2 years doing. And so we're focused in that range of focused on technology, not so much face-to-face sales. So now where live events are coming back, and when my business partner and I went to Dreamforce in 2022, it was, the only word I can use, it was weird. People really didn't know how to do that. What was a traditional exchange of business cards or contact information had kind of gotten lost. And I don't know if anybody else has had that experience, but that's what we saw.
Yeah, we definitely saw that as well. I think the first event I went back to was Salesforce World Tour in London in 2022 after the pandemic. And I was speaking to people and they said, "Oh, do you have a business card?" And I was like, "No, I don't have a business card." Because I just hadn't needed them, and you don't think about carrying them anymore. And it was great to be able to add someone directly on LinkedIn and send them a message, but it doesn't put their information directly into Salesforce. And like you said, if you don't follow up with someone almost immediately, and I'm guilty of this as a buyer, a software buyer myself, if someone doesn't follow up with me immediately, I'm like, okay, well, I'm not buying from you because you're too slow. So it's really interesting how it works, obviously, both ways. You need to follow up immediately with someone, but then when you're on the other side, you definitely want them to follow up immediately with you. Even if you've met them at an event, it's great to have that sort of automatic, just, hey, we met at this event. You make that connection, and then you can obviously follow up later, but just keeps that person top of mind, or keeps you, if you're that person, top of mind to other people.
Absolutely. And that was that experience you had. We had something similar. And this was not just confined to small businesses. We're talking about representatives from global companies were having that problem. I won't say the name, but major Fortune 500 company. We're talking with a rep, and he wanted our contact information. He pulls out a Post-it note and he's writing it down on a Post-it note. We're like, "Hey, we've got a business card to give you." And he's like, "No, this is how we're cataloging everything." Couldn't believe it. So that skill set that was there pre-pandemic had disappeared in just like over 2 years. Yeah. Now, One other major trend that had occurred throughout all of this was the rise in importance of sustainable practices. So you saw that where before it was kind of something that you had a team within your corporation that was kind of pushing the ESG initiatives. Now it's something that's very top of mind when consumers are going to market. They want to know what kind of sustainability programs you have or if the product itself is sustainable. So if we take this into account, how has this shaped the sales process? Slide, please. So when we look at the overall sales process, when we say what characteristics are now shaping it, we kind of categorize it into 5. First, has to be mobile. Everything is moving to mobile. It has to be fast. We've already talked a little bit about responsiveness. It has to be compliant. It has to be secure. And lastly, as I was just referring to, sustainability is a huge part of that. So let's jump in first and talk about the mobile side of things. Slide, please. All right. So these numbers are, I think, a year and a half old, and based on trends, they're probably higher than they are now. But look at this, 80% of B2B buyers use mobile at work, all right? 60% of B2B buyers used mobiles to make a decision about a buying decision. And then 50% of all searches are now being done on mobile. So what this means is now you need to meet your customer where they are. And we like to say, you also need to be able to do that wherever you are. And that kind of led to our actual tagline, which is engage everywhere. So the evolution of this now is not so much of, hey, customers are researching companies online. The evolution is, how do we actually conclude sales using a mobile device? Right, next slide, please. Fast. This is the Inside Sales and MIT study had a lot of really interesting findings to it. And one of them is what we call the 5-21 rule. And what they found was when there is an inquiry and a lead comes in, if you respond to that lead within 5 minutes, your chances of turning that into an opportunity are 21 times greater than people who responded just 6 minutes in later. So the need to respond instantly, and again, I go back to that pandemic era where everybody is online and the pace of business is fast. It is super fast now. So our criteria is kind of, you want to set a standard for trying to engage within 5 minutes. And then the demand gen study found that when they looked at, hey, what are the deciding factors for when you made a buying decision? Number 1 was the timeliness of responses to inquiries.
I think as a buyer, Mike, just to talk a little about that, I think it's not so much about the timeliness of the response, but it sets the tone for the entire engagement that your customer is going to have with you as an organization. So it's not just about people being impatient and wanting information now, which is part of it, I think, because we all sort of live in the instant age, instant gratification age. But it's just about setting the right tone as well for the entire sales cycle, and then also the post-sales cycle. So they know that if you respond quickly on the sales cycle or during the sales cycle, that you will, most likely be responsive as well in the post-sales cycle when they need support. So it's a little bit of psychology as well on the buyer side when it comes to timing.
That's big time. Yeah, because you're establishing that relationship. This is part of, to me, it's kind of respect. Hey, you've come to me, you've knocked on my door, you're inquiring. Well, somebody's standing on your door and they keep knocking and you're not answering it. What kind of relationship is that set? So
exactly.
That's great point. All right, next slide, please. All right, now talking about the compliance side of the things. So this was, if we go back and look at 2019 was really the first time that GDPR, the enforcement agencies, started cracking down on it. Since then, they've issued over $4 billion of fines. So the honeymoon that was, hey, we'll give you some time to kind of figure out GDPR, that is now over. And in the United States, like I referred to earlier, we were kind of like, what is this GDPR? Because applies to if you are doing business with a citizen of the EU, not where your company is. So we had US companies kind of concerned about, hey, am I governed by this or not? So the reach of GDPR is well beyond what we initially expected it to be. And then there are companies here in the US that we're thinking, well, hey, we're kind of insulated from that. And that is going away because data privacy laws are not getting less. They're actually proliferating. So we have in the States here, it's going to be a mess for a while because it's proceeding state by state. So we actually have 12 states that have different data privacy laws, and 7 more states have legislation that's actually in committee now getting ready to be passed. So think about that. That's 19 different privacy laws that you have to deal with. So the compliance side of this has become a real bear. But the main parts that we have to figure out is that the general central theme is that relationship, and do you have consent to market to somebody, and do you have you acknowledged the purpose that you're going to use that person's data for? And Alyssa, going back to the relationship, to me, when I first saw GDPR come out, this was hey, it only makes sense that I ask you for your permission. If I want to do business with you, is it okay if I send you marketing materials?
Yeah, absolutely. And this, it is a problem, or not a problem, but a challenge in every organization in Europe, especially. I mean, I can only speak for myself and what I've done and what I've had to deal with. We rolled out Salesforce for the first time this year. And every new system that we get has to go through GDPR compliance audit or security process to understand whether, we're going to be able to comply with the regulations. And that's a very, very strict process in Europe. So, and I've had situations having moved to Europe many years ago, I'll go to sites that are based in the US and they'll completely block European visitors because they just don't want to have to deal with GDPR. So imagine the audience or the consumers that you're missing out on. These are things like news websites. It's like, if people like, nope, sorry, we don't want to deal with anyone from the EU because it's simply too complicated. And that's obviously hampering people's ability to advertise and viewership and things like that. So it's definitely something that organizations have to think about, not only from 2018, but for the rest of time, basically, unless it gets changed.
Exactly. I don't see it changing. Like I said,
Exactly.
This is something where the data privacy laws are getting more prolific. There are more of them, and they're actually they're getting more strict and not less. So yeah, it's a problem to be dealt with for sure. Okay, next slide. So on the security side, this was something that really accelerated, and I want to focus on that first statistic. So the losses to cybercrime went up 194% in the United States just from 2019 to 2022. So over that period of the pandemic, it was over $10.3 billion last year alone was lost due to internet-based crimes in the United States. And going back to that little fishbowl, business card in the fishbowl example, 2.7 billion of that was due to compromised email. So attacks issued through email. And a case study that I have noted there, I was at the Pentagon in 2015, showed up at work one day, and the entire unclassified network was shut down. Why was that? Well, it was a phishing attack. It was an email phishing attack that was successful, shut down the entire network. So this is no longer I've got to do my email security training. Yeah, it's real. It's occurring every day, and the losses are starting to mount. So businesses are paying closer attention to it.
Absolutely. I mean, even just today, I reported an email to our internal phishing program, and I got a message saying, "Oh, well done. This was a test."
Congratulations, Alyssa. Yes.
But it happens all the time. We're constantly having to report these emails because you just don't know. And I think it's at the point now as well where you're almost skeptical of, even if it looks genuine, you're skeptical of it. And so it just shows how much phishing is on the rise and people are very worried about it.
and they're getting really sophisticated. So that's why that suspicion you have is well founded, because the phishing attacks are they look like real emails, and are quite good at it nowadays.
Yeah.
All right, next slide, please. All right, lastly, I want to talk about the sustainable element. And so there are two components to this. The first one is the attitude of consumers. And the consumers here in the States, 78% of consumers now look favorably upon sustainability. It's part of the lifestyle, and they want to go out and look for products that are actually marketing themselves as sustainable. And then the other side is from the actual business side. So it makes total sense that we do this ethically. We want to take care of the planet, but it does have a positive business return. And it's been shown that products that are sustainable, that market themselves as sustainable, have about an 8% higher growth rate. So the additional side of this was interesting, is how major corporations now, how it's affecting their supply chain. And we personally have experienced this. And that is, not only are the large corporations touting their sustainable efforts, they demand that their vendors are sustainable. And then they want the vendors to be sustainable. So it's this initiative to go all the way from the top of the supply chain all the way to the bottom to make sure that sustainable practices are actually being enforced.
It's so funny because I'm sure everyone on the webinar can remember at least once throwing out a box of probably 90% business cards that you've never used.
Yes.
I mean, I dread absolutely. I always try and recycle them, of course, but I dread to think how many boxes of unused business cards I've thrown out over the years. And I just, whenever I join a company now, I just say, don't get me any. Like, unless I'm going to an event, I just, I don't feel like I need them, because I'm just like, I feel really guilty. I don't want to throw them away. But then when you go to the event, you don't have anything to give anyone. So it's, it's a catch-22. And it's funny that you also mentioned about the supply chain of sustainability, because I actually got asked that about Salesforce when we were implementing it at my current company. And then someone said, oh, what's the sustainability of the Salesforce, And I was like, I don't know. I didn't even think about it from a SaaS perspective, because you don't necessarily think about it. Of course, you think about it with food products and clothing and, things like physical goods, but you don't then think about it from the non-physical good aspect. But actually, it's a perfect question, because like you said, it's the vendors and the vendors and everybody. So it's really, really important.
Yeah. Sustainability now is not, it is product agnostic. It doesn't matter what the product is. They want to know what your sustainability program is like if you're going to be a vendor.
Exactly.
So before we move on to the next slide, I kind of want to build it up a little bit, because the next slide is basically why we're all here. It's why Salesforce exists. And if you're going to take one or two things away from this webinar, this is going to be one of the main points. All right. Next slide, please, Hope. All right, why we need a lead gen process. And it is because even though we think we may be good at follow-up, we are not. Humans are actually really bad at following up. And this chart is one of my favorites, because if you take a look at it, the red bar is the number of contacts that sales reps typically make before they give up and quit. And then the green bar is when sales actually occurred. How many contacts does it take until that sale actually closes? And you can see the discrepancy here. We'll just talk about the ends of the chart. So 48% of reps stop on the first call or never make a call at all. And all the way on the other side is 80% of the sales require that you make at least 5 calls, and usually it takes more. So 5 to 12 is where 80% of the sales occur. So this was recognized early on. We need automation. We're just not good. There's something in the human psyche called recency bias. That's Daniel Kahneman, Amos Tversky came up with that. And basically, we are geared to the most recent thing on our plates, right? That gets the greatest weight of importance in our minds. And what that leads to in the sales department is what's called chasing a lead. So you're constantly chasing, you contact them once, they don't respond, boom, they're gone. Well, that's where automation comes in. The beauty of Salesforce and CRM platforms is that they remind us. They're there to guide us through that process, to keep us going beyond that first call, to keep us engaged so that we can actually make it to the part of the sales cycle where the sale is actually closing. So it's an incredibly important concept to understand of why we absolutely have to have a lead generation process. And with that, Alyssa, unless you have anything else on this slide.
Nope.
Okay. All right. With that, let's jump into what the actual lead generation process looks like for 2023 and beyond.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thanks, Mike, for all of that very valuable information. Some of it I didn't even realize was going on. So that was great.
You're welcome.
Like Mike mentioned, I'm going to break all of this down and kind of tell you how, we kind of divide and conquer on these items. And with that in mind, the goal is to engage quickly, right? You want to reinforce the experience in the memory. And like Mike mentioned, that recency bias, right? The first stage of that is mobile engagement to meet the customer where they are. And here's what the lead generation sequence generally looks like, right? I'm talking to a client, I get their business card, I put it in my pocket, or I write it down, and hopefully I go back in later and enter it into Salesforce. The problem is that rarely happens. In fact, we did a study and it turns out only 1 out of 10 times does the information actually make it into Salesforce. And so for you guys, how often have you walked away from a face-to-face meeting and just forgotten to get contact information or just a critical piece of information in general? I know I have plenty.
Yeah, I will say, so at our Dreamforce 2022 event, when we went to that, our CEO is a very data-oriented guy, and he ran a little experiment while he was there. We were scanned well over 50 times. And for those in the chat, I would love to hear how many responses you think out of 50 scans, how many responses you think we got. Anybody throwing any guesses out there? Alyssa?
I would say less than 15.
Less than 15? Okay. 2.
Oh,
wow.
So out of 50 vendors that had scanned our bags, 2 people actually responded to us. And that's not like immediately, that was ever. So that was actually worse than the chart that I showed you that said 48% actually make the first call. That was just 2 people responding. So that front end mobile engagement, that shows how there's a huge gap there.
I think it was funny as well, what Hope was saying about, when people take information down either on a business card or on a Post-it note, even if it makes it into Salesforce, how good is the quality of that data? And you also miss out on things like critical information like lead source. And then you can't build your reports to understand, okay, where did that lead actually come from? Because it might just be empty. They might have selected other, who knows what they've selected. So the data quality issue, even if it makes it into Salesforce, is a problem.
I totally agree. And that's kind of a good segue into, what should that look like? Like you want to create a two-way conversation so that you can double the engagement opportunity, right? You want to capture their contact data, and you also want to share yours, or which you mentioned earlier is a big problem, like you get theirs, but do you give them yours? And so even then, if they ask for marketing materials, share it instantly with a QR code. Everything is turning, mobile these days. And even alongside that, there's no wasted paper, and it's way more convenient, than carrying around brochures. And, if you don't want to carry around a business card, you probably don't want to have a brochure in your back pocket either. But
Absolutely.
another thing that you mentioned was, that you also want to add any actionable business intelligence to qualify the lead, right? How many employees they have, what their budget is, the stuff that's actually going to matter once you do start talking to them. And, we want to immediately use automation to send all of this information into Salesforce so that engagement sequence is already starting, right? If this step doesn't occur, then the rest of the process is either late and less effective or it never happens at all. Right. And an example of that instant engagement would be using a QR code, linked to your order page. And so you're taking orders on the spot. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. But QR codes, we're seeing them everywhere, right? TVs, restaurants, and now everywhere on mobile devices. And on top of that, you can also send, those VIP leads that are going to turn out to be great directly to Slack for immediate team collaboration. Earlier, Mike talked a lot about GDPR and how it's been a big deal in Europe for a while and it's spreading globally. Salesforce, they jumped into action when they released consent management, and then other companies started making integrations that help automate the build out of consent management. I don't know if you guys have looked at it. It's very robust. And one of those companies shared a diagram just comparing the length of time it takes to build out the consent management platform by yourself versus going with an app exchange package that really does the heavy lifting. And the results kind of shocked me. I didn't realize it. And I'm going to tell you the results. And I assume that this is all, assuming that you or your admin doesn't have any other tasks going on. So at minimum, it takes 13 weeks to do it yourself versus about 3 weeks to use one of the app exchange packages that automates the process. So just this comparison alone tells us that automation will accelerate your sales cycle.
It's
right?
funny to say that, Hope, because, I, as an admin or as the head of Salesforce, I never have an empty to-do list. So
yeah.
Can you imagine how long it would take me to do something like that if it was 13 weeks with uninterrupted, right? And mine never ending. So it would basically never get done, which would result in me and my organization not being compliant from a Salesforce perspective, which has obviously massive implications as we talked about. And one of the best things about going with an app exchange package is that native side of it. So I, as a system owner, have to get everything approved through IT, security. Native applications don't need any extra approval, right? They only need budget approval, but they don't need any security. They still have a small review, but it's much less detailed because they've already approved Salesforce as a platform. So the beauty of native applications is that you don't have to get them constantly the super in-depth reapproval, which for anyone in the audience who's had to do that probably can feel that pain and remembers it. So I know personally, I always will look now for native applications because it just makes my life so much easier.
Right. And, with consent, like you have to do it, right? Like you have to stay compliant. So we have to use these privacy tools to ensure that we're compliant. We have to record consent and purpose within Salesforce, for this compliance management. So, why not save some time and automate the process as much as you can? I know we try to do that frequently as well. Yeah, because there's no extra time, I feel like, in an admin's life. So
no.
Yeah.
And if we have any extra time, we would prefer to be doing, learning new things on Trailhead, not doing extra work. So yeah, that would be nice.
Yeah. I feel you. So at this point, kind of jumping back into things, you've shared your contact information, right? You've captured their information. They've consented to it. It's all in Salesforce. And so where does the rapid engagement tie in, right? So the goal here would be to start that engagement sequence immediately. And that's by using account engagement / Pardot, or actually getting these leads directly into a campaign. And this is something that is a really big component for us, again, alongside the talk of automation. All right. So for example, we will be at a trade show and we will create a lead, and we've got some automation on the back end that says, if the lead source equals trade show, put it in XYZ campaign, right? We don't have to do anything. We've created the lead and it's automatically getting put in a campaign, and that person is already getting touched and qualified. So again, automation, can't harp on it enough. To kind of round out the benefits here, right? We want it mobile, so it's executable anywhere you do business. We want it to be fast, right? Less than 5 minutes from meeting to message. We have to stay compliant, right? By using real-time privacy tools. We obviously have to be secure. Everyone shared their phishing email stories, and that keeps the entire data process within the Salesforce trust layer, right? And of course, we want to be sustainable, right? It reduces the use of paper, plastic, and water, which we see becoming a thing more and more now. And I want to bring Vision-E kind of into the picture, right? Vision-E Scan, like Mike said, we've been around since about 2011, and up until this point, we've talked with you guys about a few of the hardships that we all face when it comes to lead generation, and I want to share how our solution can also be a benefit. We pride ourselves in delivering a 360 mobile engagement tool designed to master the front end lead, or the front end of the lead generation process that really we've just covered, right? Admins and people like Alyssa, they'll handle all the back end automation. But for the people, on the front end, this is who I'm speaking to, right? Where you can quickly collect contact data and actionable business intelligence and send it straight to Salesforce for immediate team engagement. All right, so I'm going to talk about these 4 main functions and how they can be a benefit, right? We've got a scan card icon. This is saving you time without having to do manual entry, right? And that's assuming that you even follow through with entering your leads into Salesforce via that manual entry, right? We talked about earlier that 9 times out of 10, it's not going to happen, right? So now we're taking that tedious task away and getting your lead into Salesforce within 10 seconds. On top of that, there is an available signature module that captures real-time consent alongside purpose statements. And you can add business intel with voice and text notes. You can also track your activity by creating a case, logging a call, or creating a task, right? Which we all know is super important. If it's not in Salesforce, it didn't happen. And this is part of the engaging within 5 minutes practice that we spoke about earlier, right? Is tracking this activity and getting it into Salesforce. And then our capture icon, right? This is how you get physical information into Salesforce or Slack so you can engage your team instantly, right? Imagery, documents, badges, cards. If you can see it, you can send it to Salesforce or Slack. We actually use this Slack function quite frequently when we're out at trade shows and different events, right? So I meet someone who's been searching high and low for a solution like ours, and I know that I need to get our sales team on it immediately. I send it straight into Slack and I let them handle the work on the Salesforce side, but it's now in Slack. My team knows that it needs their attention immediately. All right. My QR codes, super awesome. And it's something that we have really enjoyed. It's fully customizable, right? So you can create multiple business card versions. And the reason that we did that is that a customer wanted a regular version, like your regular business card version, but then they also wanted a VIP version. What I mean by that is on my regular version, I'm going to have my office number. On my VIP version, I'm going to have my mobile number, right? Which obviously, can get taken advantage of quickly if you hand it out a lot. So I'm only giving that to those VIP clients that, I want to share that personal information with. But multiple QR codes is also giving you an earth-friendly way to share marketing materials or even take orders. And by take orders, I mean that we had a brewing client that wanted to use QR codes to provide customers with their order pages. They started doing it. They were winning business on the spot. And talk about a short sales cycle. All right.
Yeah. Hope if I could jump in there and emphasize that point. When we were going over mobile and the direction of mobile that it's going and what is the goal, this is really encapsulates that. It's instant. It's taking that sales cycle where in that instance where somebody may have in days of old had to go back to the office after the event, do some follow-up. Now it's done. It's right there. And because it's mobile, you can do that anywhere that you have the device. So that's where it's trending towards, and taking that sales cycle from potentially days or weeks down to minutes.
Yeah, exactly. And, that also brings us to the digital business card side of it, right? You're never going to forget your business card again, right? Or even have to ask your company to provide you with one. On top of that, with so many, security and email hacks and identity theft, that's now protected, and it protects your reputation, right? It gives you a discreet way to share your contact information. And Alyssa, you touched on this a little bit, why are we still using paper cards, right? I mean, a digital card, it offsets the cost of paper and reduces the use of paper, water, and plastic, and even the chemicals used, in the NFC cards. I mean, do you see why would you, use a paper card nowadays?
I can't give you a real reason. Yeah. Like I said, I've thrown away too many because it happens when you get a new title, right?
Yeah.
Instead of business cards. And if you just multiply that across every company globally, can you imagine the impact it's having, just every single day? So I honestly can't give you a reason. I can't tell you how many individual business cards I've thrown away of other people's that just end up at the bottom of my bag after Dreamforce or World Tour because you don't take a note down of what you spoke to them about, and then you just don't have any way of following up. So it's so much easier because we all have our phones. We all, we're connected to them. They're almost attached to us. And it just makes life so much easier to be able to do everything very quickly. Add in some notes, be able, give yourself a little reminder about what you spoke to them about. You can have that personalized follow-up, because that's something as well as a systems owner. You can imagine how many emails I'm getting every single day about various different products, services. And I'm always more likely to respond to a personalized, highly personalized message, because it shows that people have either done their research or we met at an event, and it's just more welcoming than just hey, we have this product and would you be interested in it? And I'm like, well, what value does it give to me? So it's a much better way of connecting with your prospect.
Yeah, I giggled when you talked about your the handfuls of business cards that you have at the bottom of your bag at Dreamforce, because I have a little baggie. Oh, you can't see it. I have a baggie of business cards that sit beside me that I just can't bring myself to throw away. And I've also got a box of my own business cards, right? Because I don't use them anymore. So, but anyway.
I think everybody in the audience probably feels that. They probably know exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah, definitely. Well, finally, so just to kind of close out on our solution, we have a unique zero digital footprint. We don't store any client data. You maintain 100% data custody from start to finish. And as Mark Benioff said at Dreamforce, your data is not our product. And with that, I guess we want to open up for any questions.
Absolutely.
Hey guys, thanks so much. Great presentation. There's a lot of things that you were talking about which I haven't really heard spoken about in the Salesforce community that much. Like the follow-up thing. Following up, what is it, more than 8 times or something to actually close a deal? Like I see that talked around a lot in sales circles, but not so much in Salesforce circles. But obviously it's imperative for kind of Salesforce admins to understand that, so they can build processes in their org to ensure people can follow up easily and follow up quickly as well, within that 5 minutes that you mentioned. So yeah, really enjoyed that. Thank you very much, guys.
You're very welcome.
So we're going to go to Q&A now. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat and we can get around to as many as we can. I can see one's come over on YouTube. So there was actually one talking about that 5 minute stat you were talking about. Replying,
sure.
Replying within 5 to a lead within 5 minutes, you got a much higher chance of closing it. But how do you get to a point in Salesforce where you can do that? You know, what features in Salesforce do you need to have enabled to be able to respond to a lead within 5 minutes as soon as it comes in?
Yeah, absolutely. So Hope, if you want to talk about the specifics, and one thing that we didn't cover on the slide with that 521 was that study, when it was done, it was mainly for online inquiries. When an online inquiry comes in, what we noticed though is as live events have come back, is that expectation is still there. If you don't respond right away, your chances of converting that lead drop rapidly. So with the specifics of how to do that, Hope, if you would kind of go and just walk us through kind of that engagement sequence, what does that practically look like with the tools that we use?
Yeah, so this is something we actually, currently do on a daily basis, right? A lead will get created in our Salesforce org, just like it does for everybody else, I'm sure. But we've got automation on the back end that says, it has to meet obviously a certain criteria, and we use Flow for that, right? So once it hits that certain criteria, we have an email going out to that person within 5 minutes, right? And then from there, they're on an email sequence, they're getting another one a day later, and then we call or things of that nature. But again, it's all about automation. Once it's in Salesforce, the possibilities are endless.
And on the front side of that is, how are you getting that lead into Salesforce? So whether it's an online lead that comes in, for our solution, it's something that occurs in person, whether you're at a workshop or anything like that. You take a picture of somebody's business card or get their QR code or a V card, and within 5 minutes, you can have an email, the first email response to them. You can have your marketing materials, everything sent right to them. So it's, when you talk about a slick lead generation process, that's it. So you can literally be standing there having a meeting with somebody, you finish up your meeting, you walk away, and that person, ding, they look at their mobile device and they've got something from your team engaging them.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks so much, everyone. We've got a question from Mohammed here about the Vision E product. Does your solution send the captured contact info to Salesforce and create a lead or a contact record?
Yep, we sure do. Yep, you can send it directly into Salesforce and create a lead or a contact while also attaching it to an account or creating a new one. And then again, in the talk of rapid engagement, same type of deal, right? Once it's in there, you can go ahead and get them into a drip campaign, send an email alert, things of that nature. So, yep, good question.
Cool, great. And there's another question on YouTube over here. What maybe this is one for Alyssa. What tips would you have for sales user adoption? Because I guess that's quite a big factor in getting people to respond and follow up to these leads quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I think the easier you make something, the more widely it will be adopted. Salespeople are probably never away from their mobile device. So, the more things that you can make mobile friendly and make it simple for them, they will adopt it. And of course, it all comes down to change management and training, but purely simplicity is always better, and it'll make their lives a lot easier. And as long as they see the benefit in it and they're getting real value out of it, it's likely to be adopted by the sales team.
Yeah, if I could tag on to that, results, right? So when salespeople are seeing the results that, hey, this 5 minutes, I've got a contact, it went in, he's engaged, I've got a meeting scheduled with them now, and they close the deal. As they see their revenue going up, salespeople love results. That is, you talk about a motivation and user adoption, that'll do it for the sales team.
Well, and just think about all the manual work they're saving, because even if they were pushing stuff into Salesforce automatically but didn't have the follow-up, they were having to do it themselves. It just doesn't save them any time. And sales reps want to they want to be selling as much as possible. They don't want to be bogged down with admin. So anything that helps them with that is a great tool.
Yeah, definitely. I'll just, I can't see any more questions coming in, but we do have a bit more time. So if anyone on LinkedIn or YouTube has any more questions, feel free to send them over. It was funny, one of the things you were talking about you know, the amount of people following up after a conference. I can definitely relate to that, because at Dreamforce, you know, I'm getting so much swag for free because I'm just giving my pass and my barcode away. People are scanning me, but I am always surprised about how little I get followed up with afterwards, actually.
Or the time frame. I mean, I was getting messages. I remember I only attended Dreamforce once. I was getting messages months later, you know, hey, we met you at Dreamforce. Did you?
Yeah. Like, who are you again? Yeah. It's,
you know, it's crazy.
When you look at the investment that companies make into going to an event or putting on a workshop, when you look at investment companies, a lot of times will put on local seminars. That's a lot of resources. So you're investing all this money into getting leads that, as Hope mentioned. So I'll go back to it's Exhibitor Online did a study on events. And for all of that investment, at best, 27% of the leads they collect get actioned upon. Think about that for a minute. Only 27%, you paid all that money, only 20% of the 7% of the leads ever got followed up on. So it's a tremendous amount of opportunity that is foregone. And if you put a number of, you know, let's say you collected 100 leads and you have, doing some quick math, 73 of those leads never got followed up on. Well, multiply that 73 by what your average account value is and think about how much money that was left on the table. So it's a huge amount of opportunity that's being missed out on for something that can be remedied very quickly. So instead of getting, you know, just 12% of your leads into Salesforce, you can get 100. I mean, it's there, the capabilities there, you can get 100. So why wouldn't you?
Yeah, very true, especially from how much some of these trade shows cost. Like, I know how much Dreamforce costs, and it is not cheap.
Yeah. Invest a lot of money in their, you know, their live events. And yeah, you want to see that return on investment. So it's really important to make sure that everyone's following up on every single lead.
Yeah, definitely. All right, well, those are all the questions that have come in. So I think we can start to wrap up. So I'd just like to say a massive thank you for everyone for attending. You know, hopefully this was super interesting for you. It definitely was for me. And thank you very much to the Vision E guys and Alyssa for joining and walking us through all that. So any final words before we wrap up, Mike?
No, we'd just like to say thank you, Ben, and thank you to your team for helping us set this up. Thanks for our attendees. I hope it was informative. You got something out of it, and feel free. Please visit us at visione.com and see what we have to offer. And hopefully we'll see somebody at an event in the not so distant future.
Great, thank you. And Hope?
Yeah, just to kind of echo that, big thanks to the Salesforce Ben team and Alyssa. I thoroughly enjoyed, you know, getting to just highlight, you know, not only our solution, but, you know, the ways that we kind of divide and conquer and, you know, are doing business in this new age. You know, things have changed so much. So really enjoyed it. And yeah, hoping to see all of you soon. We will be at the World Tour in Atlanta. So if you're going to be there, make sure to stop by and say hey.
Great. And last but not least, Alyssa?
No, just thanks to the Vision E guys for having me. It was great to discuss. I always like
Thank you, Alyssa.
Talking about other solutions and just, yeah, hearing from the people in the comments as well. So thanks to everyone who left a comment. We always love to answer questions. But yeah, it was really fun.
Great. All right. Thank you very much, everyone. We'll see you on the next LinkedIn Live.
Thank you. Bye-bye.